Chapter 11. Alliance of Demetrius and Ptolemy. The king of Egypt gathered his forces, as numerous as the sands of the seashore, and many ships, and he sought by deceit to take Alexander's kingdom and add it to his own. He entered Syria with peaceful words, and the people in the cities opened their gates to welcome him, as King Alexander had ordered them to do, since Ptolemy was his father-in-law. But when Ptolemy entered the cities, he stationed garrison troops in each one. When he reached Azotus, he was shown the temple of Dagon destroyed by fire, Azotus and its suburbs demolished, corpses lying about, and the charred bodies of those burnt by Jonathan in the war, and stacked up along his route. To prejudice the king against Jonathan, he was told what the latter had done, but the king said nothing. Jonathan met the king with pomp at Joppa, and they greeted each other and spent the night there. Jonathan accompanied the king as far as the river called Eleutherus, and then returned to Jerusalem. Plotting evil against Alexander, King Ptolemy took possession of the cities along the seacoast, as far as Seleucia by the sea. He sent ambassadors to King Demetrius, saying, "Come, let us make a pact with each other. I will give you my daughter, whom Alexander has married, and you shall reign over your father's kingdom. I regret that I gave him my daughter, for he has sought to kill me." His real reason for accusing Alexander, however, was that he coveted Alexander's kingdom. After taking his daughter away and giving her to Demetrius, Ptolemy broke with Alexander. Their enmity became open. Then Ptolemy entered Antioch and assumed the crown of Asia. He thus wore two crowns on his head, that of Egypt and that of Asia. Deaths of Alexander and Ptolemy. King Alexander was in Cilicia at that time, because the people of that region had revolted. When Alexander heard the news, he came to challenge Ptolemy in battle. Ptolemy marched out and met him with a strong force, and put him to flight. Alexander fled to Arabia to seek protection. King Ptolemy's triumph was complete when the Arab Zabdiel cut off Alexander's head and sent it to Ptolemy. But 3 days later, King Ptolemy himself died, and his men in the fortified cities were killed by the inhabitants of the strongholds. Thus Demetrius became king in the year 167. Pact with Demetrius. At that time, Jonathan gathered together the men of Judea to attack the citadel in Jerusalem, and they set up many machines against it. Some transgressors of the law, enemies of their own nation, went to the king and informed him that Jonathan was besieging the citadel. When Demetrius heard this, he was furious, and set out immediately for Ptolemais. He wrote to Jonathan to discontinue the siege, and to meet him for a conference at Ptolemais as soon as possible. On hearing this, Jonathan ordered the siege to continue. He selected some elders and priests of Israel, and exposed himself to danger by going to the king at Ptolemais. He brought with him silver, gold apparel, and many other presents, and found favor with the king. Although some impious men of his own nation brought charges against him, the king treated him just as his predecessors had done, and showed him great honor in the presence of all his friends. He confirmed him in the high priesthood and in all the honors he had previously held, and had him enrolled among his chief friends. Jonathan asked the king to exempt Judea and the 3 districts of Samaria from tribute, promising him in return 300 talents. The king agreed, and wrote the following letter to Jonathan about all these matters. King Demetrius sends greetings to his brother Jonathan and to the Jewish nation. We are sending you, for your information, a copy of the letter that we wrote to Lesthenes, our kinsman, concerning you. King Demetrius sends greetings to his father, Lesthenes. Because of the goodwill they show us, we have decided to bestow benefits on the Jewish nation, who are our friends and who observe their obligations to us. Therefore, we confirm their possession not only of the territory of Judea, but also of the 3 districts of Epharima, Lydda, and Ramathaim. These districts, together with all their dependencies, were transferred from Samaria to Judea in favor of all those who offer sacrifices for us in Jerusalem instead of paying the royal taxes that formerly the king received from them each year from the produce of the soil and the fruit of the trees. From this day on, we grant them release from payment of all other things that would henceforth be due to us, that is, of tithes and tribute, and of the tax on the salt pans and the crown tax. Henceforth none of these provisions shall ever be revoked. Be sure, therefore, to have a copy of these instructions made, and given to Jonathan, that it may be displayed in a conspicuous place on the holy hill. The intrigue of Trypho. When King Demetrius saw that the land was peaceful under his rule, and that he had no opposition, he dismissed his entire army, every man to his home, except the foreign troops which he had hired from the islands of the nations. So all the soldiers who had served under his predecessors hated him. When a certain Trypho, who had previously belonged to Alexander's party, saw that all the troops were grumbling at Demetrius, he went to Imalcu the Arab, who was bringing up Alexander's young son, Antiochus. Trypho kept urging Imalcu to hand over the boy to him, that he might make him king in his father's place. During his stay there of many days, he told him of all that Demetrius had done, and of the hatred that his soldiers had for him. Jonathan aids Demetrius. Meanwhile, Jonathan sent the request to King Demetrius to withdraw his troops from the citadel of Jerusalem and from the other strongholds, for they were constantly hostile to Israel. Demetrius in turn sent this word to Jonathan: I will not only do this for you and your nation, but I will greatly honor you and your nation when I find the opportunity. Do me the favor, therefore, of sending men to fight for me, because all my troops have revolted. So Jonathan sent 3,000 good fighting men to him at Antioch. When they came to the king, he was delighted over their arrival, for the populace, 120,000 strong, had massed in the center of the city in an attempt to kill him. But he took refuge in the palace, while the populace gained control of the main streets and began to fight. So the king called the Jews to his aid. They all rallied around him and spread out through the city. On that day they killed about 100,000 men in the city, which at the same time they set on fire and plundered on a large scale. Thus they saved the king's life. When the populace saw that the Jews held the city at their mercy, they lost courage, and cried out to the king in supplication, Give us your terms, and let the Jews stop attacking us and our city. So they threw down their arms, and made peace. The Jews thus gained glory in the eyes of the king and all his subjects, and they became renowned throughout his kingdom. Finally they returned to Jerusalem with much spoil. But when King Demetrius was sure of his royal throne, and the land was peaceful under his rule, he broke all his promises and became estranged from Jonathan. Instead of rewarding Jonathan for all the favors he had received from him, he caused him much trouble. Alliance with Trypho. After this, Trypho returned and brought with him the young boy Antiochus, who became king and wore the royal crown. All the soldiers whom Demetrius had discharged rallied around Antiochus and fought against Demetrius, who was routed and fled. Trypho captured the elephants and occupied Antioch. Then young Antiochus wrote to Jonathan, I confirm you in the high priesthood and appoint you ruler over the 4 districts, and wish you to be one of the king's friends. He also sent him gold dishes and a dinner service, gave him the right to drink from gold cups, to dress in royal purple, and to wear a gold buckle. Likewise, he made Jonathan's brother Simon governor of the region from the ladder of Tyre to the frontier of Egypt. Jonathan set out and traveled through west of Euphrates and its cities, and all the forces of Syria espoused his cause as allies. When he arrived at Ashkelon, the citizens welcomed him with pomp. But when he set out for Gaza, the people of Gaza locked their gates against him. So he besieged it and burned and plundered its suburbs. Then the people of Gaza appealed to him for mercy, and he granted them peace. He took the sons of their chief men as hostages, and sent them to Jerusalem. He then traveled on through the province as far as Damascus. War with Demetrius. Jonathan heard that the generals of Demetrius had come with a strong force to Kadesh in Galilee, intending to remove him from office. So he went to meet them, leaving his brother Simon in the province. Simon besieged Bethzur, attacked it for many days, and blockaded the inhabitants. When they sued for peace, he granted it to them. He expelled them from the city, took possession of it, and put a garrison there. Meanwhile, Jonathan and his army pitched their camp near the waters of Gennesaret, and at daybreak they went to the plain of Hazor. There in front of him on the plain was the army of the foreigners. This army attacked him in the open, having first detached an ambush against him in the mountains. Then the men in ambush rose out of their places and joined in the battle. All of Jonathan's men fled. No one stayed except the army commanders Mattathias, son of Absalom, and Judas, son of Chalpi. Jonathan tore his clothes, threw earth on his head, and prayed. Then he went back to the combat, and so overwhelmed the enemy that they took to flight. Those of his men who were running away saw it, and returned to him, and with him they pursued the enemy as far as their camp in Kadesh, where they pitched their own camp. 3,000 of the foreign troops fell on that day. Then Jonathan returned to Jerusalem. Chapter 12. Alliances with Rome and Sparta. When Jonathan saw that the times favored him, he sent selected men to Rome to confirm and renew his friendship with the Romans. He also sent letters to Sparta and other places for the same purpose. After reaching Rome, the men entered the Senate chamber and said, "The high priest Jonathan and the Jewish people have sent us to renew the earlier friendship and alliance between you and them." The Romans gave them letters addressed to the authorities in the various places, requesting them to provide the envoys with safe conduct to the land of Judah. This is a copy of the letter that Jonathan wrote to the Spartans. Jonathan, the high priest, the senate of the nation, the priests, and the rest of the Jewish people send greetings to their brothers, the Spartans. Long ago, a letter was sent to the high priest Onias from Arius, who then reigned over you, stating that you are our brothers, as the attached copy shows. Onias welcomed the envoy with honor and received the letter, which clearly referred to alliance and friendship. Though we have no need of these things, since we have for our encouragement the sacred books that are in our possession, we have ventured to send word to you for the renewal of brotherhood and friendship, so as not to become strangers to you altogether. A long time has passed since your mission to us. We, on our part, have never ceased to remember you in the sacrifices and prayers that we offer on our feasts and other appropriate days, as it is right and proper to remember brothers. We likewise rejoice in your renown, but many hardships and wars have beset us, and the kings around us have attacked us. We did not wish to be troublesome to you and to the rest of our allies and friends in these wars. With the help of heaven for our support, we have been saved from our enemies, and they have been humbled. So we have chosen Numenius, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, and we have sent them to the Romans to renew our former friendship and alliance with them. We have also ordered them to come to you, and greet you, and to deliver to you our letter about the renewal of our brotherhood. Therefore kindly send us an answer on this matter. This is a copy of the letter that was sent to Onias. Arius, king of the Spartans, sends greetings to Onias, the high priest. A document has been found stating that the Spartans and the Jews are brothers, both nations descended from Abraham. Now that we have learned this, kindly write to us about your welfare. We, on our part, are informing you that your cattle and your possessions are ours, and ours are yours. We have therefore given orders that you should be told of this. Demetrius repelled. Jonathan heard that the generals of Demetrius had returned to attack him with a stronger army than before. He set out from Jerusalem and went into the country of Hamath to meet them, giving them no time to enter his province. The spies he had sent into their camp came back and reported that the enemy had made ready to attack the Jews that very night. Therefore, when the sun set, Jonathan ordered his men to be on guard and to remain armed, ready for combat throughout the night. He also set outposts all around the camp. When the enemy heard that Jonathan and his men were ready for battle, their hearts sank with fear and dread. They lighted fires and then withdrew. But because Jonathan and his men were watching the lights burning, they did not know what had happened until morning. Then Jonathan pursued them, but he could not overtake them, for they had crossed the river Eleutherus. So Jonathan turned aside against the Arabs, who are called Zabadeans, overwhelming and plundering them. Then he marched on to Damascus and traversed that whole region. Simon also set out, and went as far as Ashkelon and its neighboring strongholds. He then turned to Joppa and occupied it, for he heard that its men had intended to hand over the stronghold to the supporters of Demetrius. He left a garrison there to guard it. When Jonathan returned, he assembled the elders of the people, and with them he made plans for building strongholds in Judea, for making the walls of Jerusalem still higher, and for erecting a high barrier between the citadel and the city, that would isolate the citadel, and so prevent its garrison from commerce with the city. The people therefore worked together on building up the city, for part of the east wall above the ravine had collapsed. The quarter called Chapanatha was also repaired. Simon likewise built up Adidah in the Shephelah, and strengthened its fortifications by providing them with gates and bars. Capture of Jonathan. Trypho was determined to become king of Asia, assume the crown, and do away with King Antiochus. But he was afraid that Jonathan would not permit him, but would fight against him. Looking for a way to seize and kill him, he set out and reached Bethshan. Jonathan marched out against him with 40,000 picked fighting men, and came to Bethshan. But when Trypho saw that Jonathan had arrived with a large army, he was afraid to offer him violence. Instead, he received him with honor, introduced him to all his friends, and gave him presents. He also ordered his friends and soldiers to obey him as they would himself. Then he said to Jonathan, "Why have you put all your soldiers to so much trouble, when we are not at war? Pick out a few men to stay with you, send the rest back home, and then come with me to Ptolemais. I will hand it over to you, together with other strongholds and their garrisons, as well as the officials. Then I will leave and go home. That is why I came here." Jonathan believed him and did as he said. He dismissed his troops, and they returned to the land of Judah. But he kept with him 3,000 men, of whom he sent 2,000 to Galilee, while 1,000 accompanied him. Then as soon as Jonathan had entered Ptolemais, the men of the city closed the gates and seized him. All who had entered with him they killed with the sword. Trypho sent soldiers and cavalry to Galilee and the Great Plain to destroy all Jonathan's men. These, upon learning that Jonathan had been captured and his companions killed, encouraged one another, and went out in compact body, ready to fight. As their pursuers saw that they were ready to fight for their lives, they turned back. Thus all these men of Jonathan came safely into the land of Judah. They mourned over Jonathan and his men, and were in great fear, and all Israel fell into deep mourning. All the nations round about sought to destroy them. They said, "Now that they have no leader to help them, let us make war on them, and wipe out their memory from among men." Simon, high priest and ethnarch. Chapter 13. Simon, leader of the Jews. When Simon heard that Trypho was gathering a large army to invade and ravage the land of Judah, and saw that the people were in dread and terror, he went up to Jerusalem. There he assembled the people, and exhorted them in these words, "You know what I, my brothers, and my father's house have done for the laws and the sanctuary, what battles and disasters we have been through. It was for the sake of these, for the sake of Israel, that all my brothers have perished, and I alone am left. Far be it from me, then, to save my own life in any time of distress, for I am not better than my brothers. Rather, will I avenge my nation and the sanctuary, as well as your wives and children, for all the nations out of hatred have united to destroy us." As the people heard these words, their spirit was rekindled. They shouted in reply, "You are our leader in place of your brothers Judas and Jonathan. Fight our battles, and we will do everything that you tell us." So Simon mustered all the men able to fight, and quickly, completing the walls of Jerusalem, fortified it on every side. He sent Jonathan, son of Absalom, to Joppa with a large force. Jonathan drove out the occupants, and remained there. Deceit and treachery of Trypho. Then Trypho moved from Ptolemais with a large army to invade the land of Judah, bringing Jonathan with him as prisoner. But Simon pitched his camp at Adidah, facing the plain. When Trypho learned that Simon had succeeded his brother Jonathan, and that he intended to fight him, he sent envoys to him with this message: "We have detained your brother Jonathan on account of the money that he owed the royal treasury in connection with the offices that he held. Therefore, if you send us 100 talents of silver, and 2 of his sons as hostages, to guarantee that when he is set free, he will not revolt against us, we will release him." Although Simon knew that they were speaking deceitfully to him, he gave orders to get the money and the boys, for fear of provoking much hostility among the people, who might say that Jonathan perished because Simon would not send Trypho the money and the boys. So he sent the boys and the 100 talents. But Trypho broke his promise, and would not let Jonathan go. Next he began to invade and ravage the country. His troops went around by the road that leads to Adora, but Simon and his army moved along opposite him everywhere he went. The men in the citadel sent messengers to Trypho, urging him to come to them by way of the desert, and to send them provisions. Although Trypho got all his cavalry ready to go, there was a heavy fall of snow that night, and he could not go. So he left for Gilead. When he was approaching Bascama, he had Jonathan killed and buried there. Then Trypho returned to his own country. Jonathan's tomb. Simon sent for the remains of his brother Jonathan, and buried him in Modin, the city of his fathers. All Israel bewailed him with solemn lamentation, mourning over him for many days. Then Simon erected over the tomb of his father and his brothers a monument of stones, polished front and back, and raised high enough to be seen at a distance. He set up 7 pyramids facing one another for his father and his mother and his 4 brothers. For the pyramids he devised a setting of big columns, on which he carved suits of armor as a perpetual memorial, and next to the armor he placed carved ships, which could be seen by all who sailed the sea. This tomb, which he built at Modin, is there to the present day. Pact between Simon and Demetrius. Trypho dealt treacherously with the young king Antiochus. He killed him and assumed the kingship in his place, putting on the crown of Asia. Thus he brought much evil on the land. Simon, on his part, built up the strongholds of Judea, strengthening their fortifications with high towers, thick walls, and gates with bars, and he stored up provisions in the fortresses. Simon also sent chosen men to King Demetrius with the request that he grant the land a release from taxation, for all that Trypho did was to plunder the land. In reply, King Demetrius sent him the following letter. King Demetrius sends greetings to Simon, the high priest, the friend of kings, and to the elders and the Jewish people. We have received the gold crown and the palm branch that you sent. We are willing to be on most peaceful terms with you, and to write to our official to grant you release from tribute. Whatever we have guaranteed to you remains in force, and the strongholds that you have built shall remain yours. We remit any oversights and defaults incurred up to now, as well as the crown tax that you owe. Any other tax that may have been collected in Jerusalem shall no longer be collected there. If any of you are qualified for enrollment in our service, let them be enrolled. Let there be peace between us. Thus, in the year 170, the yoke of the Gentiles was removed from Israel, and the people began to write in their records and contracts, in the first year of Simon, high priest, governor, and leader of the Jews. Capture of Gazara and the citadel. In those days Simon besieged Gazara, and surrounded it with troops. He made a siege machine, pushed it up against the city, and attacked and captured one of the towers. The men who had been on the siege machine jumped down into the city, and caused a great tumult there. The men of the city, joined by their wives and children, went up on the wall, with their garments rent, and cried out in loud voices, begging Simon to grant them peace. "Do not treat us according to our evil deeds," they said, "but according to your mercy." So Simon came to terms with them, and did not destroy them. He made them leave the city, however, and he purified the houses in which there were idols. Then he entered the city with hymns and songs of praise. After removing from it everything that was impure, he settled there men who observed the law. He improved its fortifications and built himself a residence. Then men in the citadel in Jerusalem were prevented from going out into the country and back for the purchase of food. They suffered greatly from hunger, and many of them died of starvation. They finally cried out to Simon for peace, and he gave them peace. He expelled them from the citadel, and cleansed it of impurities. On the 23rd day of the 2nd month, in the year 171, the Jews entered the citadel with shouts of jubilation, waving of palm branches, the music of harps and cymbals and lyres, and the singing of hymns and canticles, because a great enemy of Israel had been destroyed. Simon decreed that this day should be celebrated every year with rejoicing. He also strengthened the fortifications of the Temple Hill alongside the citadel, and he and his companions dwelt there. Seeing that his son John was now a grown man, Simon made him commander of all his soldiers, with his residence in Gazara. Chapter 14. Capture of Demetrius. In the year 172, King Demetrius assembled his army and marched into Media to obtain help, so that he could fight Trypho. When Arsaces, king of Persia and Media, heard that Demetrius had invaded his territory, he sent one of his generals to take him alive. The general went forth and defeated the army of Demetrius. He captured him and brought him to Arsaces, who put him in prison. Glory of Simon. The land was at rest all the days of Simon, who sought the good of his nation. His people were delighted with his power, and his magnificence throughout his reign. As his crowning glory, he captured the port of Joppa, and made it a gateway to the isles of the sea. He enlarged the borders of his nation, and gained control of the country. He took many enemies prisoners of war, and made himself master of Gazara, Bethzur, and the citadel. He cleansed the citadel of its impurities. There was no one to withstand him. The people cultivated their land in peace. The land yielded its produce, and the trees of the field their fruit. Old men sat in the squares, all talking about the good times, while the young men wore the glorious apparel of war. He supplied the cities with food, and equipped them with means of defense, till his glorious name reached the ends of the earth. He brought peace to the land, and Israel was filled with happiness. Every man sat under his vine and his fig tree, with no one to disturb him. No one was left to attack them in their land. The kings in those days were crushed. He strengthened all the lowly among his people, and was zealous for the law. He suppressed all the lawless and the wicked. He made the temple splendid, and enriched its equipment. Alliance with Rome and Sparta. When people heard in Rome, and even in Sparta, that Jonathan had died, they were deeply grieved. But when the Romans heard that his brother Simon had been made high priest in his place, and was master of the country and the cities, they sent him inscribed tablets of bronze to renew with him the friendship and alliance that they had established with his brothers Judas and Jonathan. These were read before the assembly in Jerusalem. This is a copy of the letter that the Spartans sent. The rulers and the citizens of Sparta send greetings to Simon the high priest, the elders, the priests, and the rest of the Jewish people, our brothers. The envoys you sent to our people have informed us of your glory and fame, and we were happy that they came. In accordance with what they said, we have recorded the following in the public decrees. Since Numenius, son of Antiochus, and Antipater, son of Jason, envoys of the Jews, have come to us to renew their friendship with us, the people have voted to receive the men with honor, and to deposit a copy of their words in the public archives, so that the people of Sparta may have a record of them. A copy of this decree has been made for Simon the high priest. After this, Simon sent Numenius to Rome with a great gold shield, weighing 1,000 minas, to confirm the alliance with the Romans. Decree of honor. When the people heard of these things, they said, "How can we thank Simon and his sons? He and his brothers and his father's house have stood firm and repulsed Israel's enemies. They have thus preserved its liberty." So they made an inscription on bronze tablets, which they affixed to pillars on Mount Zion. The following is a copy of the inscription. On the 18th day of Elul, in the year 172, that is the 3rd year under Simon the high priest in Asa Ramel, in a great assembly of priests, people, rulers of the nations, and elders of the country, the following proclamation was made. Since there have often been wars in our country, Simon, son of the priest Mattathias, descendant of Joarib, and his brothers, have put themselves in danger and resisted the enemies of their nation, so that their sanctuary and law might be maintained. And they have thus brought great glory to their nation. After Jonathan had rallied his nation and become their high priest, he was gathered to his kinsmen. When the enemies of the Jews sought to invade and devastate their country, and to lay hands on their temple, Simon rose up and fought for his nation, spending large sums of his own money to equip the men of his nation's armed forces and giving them their pay. He fortified the cities of Judea, especially the frontier city of Bethzur, where he stationed a garrison of Jewish soldiers, and where previously the enemy's arms had been stored. He also fortified Joppa by the sea and Gazara on the border of Azotus, a place previously occupied by the enemy. These cities he resettled with Jews, and furnished them with all that was necessary for their restoration. When the Jewish people saw Simon's loyalty and the glory he planned to bring to his nation, they made him their leader and high priest, because of all he had accomplished and the loyalty and justice he had shown his nation. In every way he sought to exalt his people. In his time, and under his guidance, they succeeded in driving the Gentiles out of their country, especially those in the city of David in Jerusalem, who had built for themselves a citadel from which they used to sally forth to defile the environs of the temple and inflict grave injury on its purity. In this citadel he stationed Jewish soldiers, and he strengthened its fortifications for the defense of the land and the city, while he also raised the wall of Jerusalem to a greater height. Consequently, King Demetrius confirmed him in the high priesthood, made him one of his friends, and conferred the highest honors on him. He had indeed heard that the Romans had addressed the Jews as friends, allies, and brothers, and that they had received Simon's envoys with honor. The Jewish people and their priest have therefore made the following decisions. Simon shall be their permanent leader and high priest until a true prophet arises. He shall act as governor-general over them, and shall have charge of the temple to make regulations concerning its functions and concerning the country, its weapons and strongholds. He shall be obeyed by all. All contracts made in the country shall be dated by his name. He shall have the right to wear royal purple and gold ornaments. It shall not be lawful for any of the people or priests to nullify any of these decisions, or to contradict the orders given by him, or to convene an assembly in the country without his consent, to be clothed in royal purple, or wear an official gold brooch. Whoever acts otherwise or violates any of these prescriptions shall be liable to punishment. All the people approved of granting Simon the right to act in accord with these decisions, and Simon accepted and agreed to act as high priest, governor-general, and ethnarch of the Jewish people and priests, and to exercise supreme authority over all. It was decreed that this inscription should be engraved on bronze tablets, to be set up in a conspicuous place in the precincts of the temple, and that copies of it should be deposited in the treasury, where they would be available to Simon and his sons. Chapter 15. Letter of Antiochus. Antiochus, son of King Demetrius, sent a letter from the islands of the sea to Simon, the priest and ethnarch of the Jews, and to all the nation, which read as follows. King Antiochus sends greetings to Simon, the priest and ethnarch, and to the Jewish nation. Whereas certain villains have gained control of the kingdom of my ancestors, I intend to reclaim it, that I may restore it to its former state. I have recruited a large number of mercenary troops, and equipped warships to make a landing in my country, and take revenge on those who have ruined it, and laid waste many cities in my realm. Now therefore, I confirm to you all the tax exemptions that the kings before me granted you, and whatever other privileges they conferred on you. I authorize you to coin your own money as legal tender in your country. Jerusalem and its temple shall be free. All the weapons you have prepared, and all the strongholds you have built and now occupy, shall remain in your possession. All debts, present or future, due to the royal treasury, shall be cancelled for you, now and for all time. When we recover our kingdom, we will greatly honor you and your nation and the temple, so that your glory will be manifest in all the earth. In the year 174, Antiochus invaded the land of his ancestors, and all the troops rallied to him, so that few were left with Trypho. Pursued by Antiochus, Trypho fled to Dor by the sea, realizing what a mass of troubles had come upon him now that his soldiers had deserted him. Antiochus encamped before Dor with 120,000 infantry and 8,000 horsemen. While he invested the city, his ships closed in along the coast, so that he blockaded it by land and sea, and let no one go in or out. Roman alliance renewed. Meanwhile, Numenius and his companions left Rome with letters such as this addressed to various kings and countries. Lucius, consul of the Romans, sends greetings to King Ptolemy. Certain envoys of the Jews, our friends and allies, have come to us to renew their earlier alliance of friendship. They had been sent by Simon the high priest and the Jewish people, and they brought with them a gold shield worth 1,000 minas. Therefore, we have decided to write to various kings and countries that they are not to harm them or wage war against them or their cities or their country, and are not to assist those who fight against them. We have also decided to accept the shield from them. If then any troublemakers from their country take refuge with you, hand them over to Simon the high priest, so that he may punish them according to their law. The consul sent similar letters to kings Demetrius, Attalus, Ariathes, and Arsaces, to all the countries, Sampsames, Sparta, Delos, Mindos, Sicon, Caria, Samos, Pamphylia, Lycia, Halicarnassus, Rhodes, Pharsalus, Kos, Side, Aradus, Gortina, Snidus, Cyprus, and Cyrene. A copy of the letter was also sent to Simon the high priest. Hostility of Antiochus. When King Antiochus was encamped before Dor, he assaulted it continuously, both with troops and with the siege machines he had made. He blockaded Trypho by preventing anyone from going in or out. Simon sent to Antiochus's support 2,000 elite troops, together with gold and silver, and much equipment. But he refused to accept the aid. In fact, he broke all the agreements he had previously made with Simon, and became hostile toward him. He sent Athenobius, one of his friends, to confer with Simon and say, "You are occupying Joppa and Gazara and the citadel of Jerusalem. These are cities of my kingdom. You have laid waste their territories, done great harm to the land, and taken possession of many districts in my realm. Therefore give up the cities you have seized, and the tribute money of the districts outside the territory of Judea, of which you have taken possession. Or instead, pay me 500 talents of silver for the devastation you have caused, and 500 talents more for the tribute money of the cities. If you do not do this, we will come and make war on you." So Athenobius, the king's friend, came to Jerusalem, and on seeing the splendor of Simon's court, the gold and silver plate on the sideboard, and the rest of his rich display, he was amazed. When he gave him the king's message, Simon said to him in reply, "We have not seized any foreign land. What we took is not the property of others, but our ancestral heritage, which for a time had been unjustly held by our enemies. Now that we have the opportunity, we are holding on to the heritage of our ancestors. As for Joppa and Gazara, which you demand, the men of these cities were doing great harm to our people, and laying waste our country. However, we are willing to pay you 100 talents for these cities." Athenobius made no reply, but returned to the king in anger. When he told him of Simon's words, of his splendor, and of all he had seen, the king fell into a violent rage. Victory over Cendebeus. Trypho had gotten aboard a ship and escaped to Orthosia. Then the king appointed Cendebeus commander-in-chief of the seacoast, and gave him infantry and cavalry forces. He ordered him to move his troops against Judea, and to fortify Kedron, and strengthen its gates, so that he could launch attacks against the Jewish people. Meanwhile, the king went in pursuit of Trypho. When Cendebeus came to Jamnia, he began to harass the people, and to make incursions into Judea, where he took people captive or massacred them. As the king ordered, he fortified Kedron, and stationed horsemen and infantry there, so that they could go out and patrol the roads of Judea. Chapter 16. John then went up from Gazara, and told his father Simon what Cendebeus was doing. Simon called his 2 oldest sons, Judas and John, and said to them, "I and my brothers and my father's house have fought the battles of Israel from our youth until today, and many times we succeeded in saving Israel. I have now grown old, but you, by the mercy of heaven, have come to man's estate. Take my place and my brothers, and go out and fight for our nation, and may the help of heaven be with you." John then mustered in the land 20,000 warriors and horsemen. Setting out against Cendebeus, they spent the night at Modin, rose early, and marched into the plain. There, facing them, was an immense army of foot soldiers and horsemen, and between the two armies was a stream. John and his men took their position against the enemy. Seeing that his men were afraid to cross the stream, John crossed first. When his men saw this, they crossed over after him. Then he divided his infantry into 2 corps, and put his cavalry between them, for the enemy's horsemen were very numerous. They blew the trumpets, and Sendebeus and his army were put to flight. Many of them fell wounded, and the rest fled toward the stronghold. It was then that John's brother Judas fell wounded, but John pursued them until Sendebeus reached Kedron, which he had fortified. Some took refuge in the towers on the plain of Azotus, but John set fire to these, and about 2,000 of the enemy perished. He then returned to Judea in peace. Murder of Simon and his sons. Ptolemy, son of Abubus, had been appointed governor of the plain of Jericho, and he had much silver and gold, being the son-in-law of the high priest. But he became ambitious and sought to get control of the country. So he made treacherous plans to do away with Simon and his sons. As Simon was inspecting the cities of the country and providing for their needs, he and his sons, Mattathias and Judas, went down to Jericho in the year 177, in the 11th month, that is, the month Shebat. The son of Abubus gave them a deceitful welcome in the little stronghold called Dock, which he had built. While serving them a sumptuous banquet, he had his men hidden there. Then, when Simon and his sons had drunk freely, Ptolemy and his men sprang up, weapons in hand, rushed upon Simon in the banquet hall, and killed him, his 2 sons, and some of his servants. By this vicious act of treason he repaid good with evil. Then Ptolemy wrote an account of this, and sent it to the king, asking that troops be sent to help him, and that the country be turned over to him. He sent other men to Gazara to do away with John. To the army officers he sent letters inviting them to come to him, so that he might present them with silver, gold, and gifts. He also sent others to seize Jerusalem and the mount of the temple. But someone ran ahead, and brought word to John at Gazara that his father and his brothers had perished, and that Ptolemy had sent men to kill him also. On hearing this, John was utterly astounded. When the men came to kill him, he had them arrested and put to death, for he knew what they meant to do. Now the rest of the history of John, his wars, and the brave deeds he performed, his rebuilding of the walls, and his other achievements, these things are recorded in the chronicle of his pontificate, from the time that he succeeded his father as high priest.